June 25, 1977, Market Square Arena, Indianapolis. It was supposed to be just another rehearsal before Elvis Presley's final concert. But when Lisa Marie walked on stage holding a microphone of her own, everything changed. Because in the middle of his last gospel, the king saw her cry, and the moment her tears fell, the music stopped cold. The Market Square Arena sat half empty that afternoon, echoing with the clatter of folding chairs and the low hum of amplifiers warming up. It was June 25, 1977, the day before what would unknowingly become Elvis Presley's final show. The crew moved like clockwork, testing mics, coiling cables, tuning guitars. The faint smell of dust and coffee lingered under the stage lights. Charlie Hodge, Elvis's close friend and rhythm guitarist, adjusted a monitor and joked with the sound crew, trying to cut the tension. Everyone could feel it. Something about this rehearsal felt heavier than usual. At 1:47 p.m., the man himself walked in. Elvis. He wore a powder blue rehearsal jumpsuit and dark sunglasses. His hair slicked perfectly despite the summer heat. The crowd of crew members straightened instinctively, even though this wasn't a real performance. His presence filled the space before he even spoke. "Afternoon, fellas," he said softly, voice slightly raspier than usual. Joe Esposito, clipboard in hand, called out the plan. "We'll run through How Great Thou Art, and maybe Unchained Melody, if you're feeling it, boss." Elvis smiled faintly. "We'll see how the spirit moves me." He glanced over to the far side of the stage, where a small figure sat cross-legged near the edge, swinging her legs and watching. Lisa Marie. She was 9 years old, wearing jeans, a pink t-shirt, and holding a little rhinestone-covered microphone that the stagehand had given her earlier. She waved. Elvis's grin widened, the fatigue melting from his face. "Hey, Peanut." Lisa giggled. "You're too loud, Daddy." Laughter rippled through the room. Even the sound engineer, Al Pachucki, smiled behind the console. The mood lightened. Elvis motioned to her. "Stick around, baby. Maybe you'll sing with me." She tilted her head, shy but curious. "Only if I can pick the song." Charlie chuckled. "She's already bossing you around, EP." Elvis smirked. "She's the only one who can." Then he turned toward the mic. The band began the soft piano intro to How Great Thou Art. His voice filled the empty arena, deep and smooth at first, then rawer, rising, shaking, stretching into something almost divine. The crew stopped working. They'd heard him sing this song 1,000 times, but today it carried a different weight. Lisa's eyes followed every note, wide and unblinking. She clutched her little microphone tighter. Halfway through the second verse, Elvis's breathing grew slower, heavier. He wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled at her again. "This one's for you, honey," he said quietly. The lights flickered slightly, catching the gold on his rings. Lisa stood up. The mic in her small hand caught a bit of feedback. She winced, then looked toward her dad as if asking permission. He nodded. The band kept playing, but something changed in the air. The laughter stopped. The sound of tuning guitars died out. The only thing left was the sound of that gospel filling the hollow arena and the sight of a little girl taking one step closer to her father. Elvis closed his eyes, letting the music guide him. But as the final note of the verse faded, he opened them again and saw something he hadn't expected. Lisa was walking toward the center of the stage. The band froze. The lights dimmed just slightly, and in that instant, no one in the room realized they were about to witness the last time the king would ever sing for her. Lisa's small footsteps echoed across the empty arena floor. Each tap bounced against the steel rafters, soft but clear. The crew stopped what they were doing. Joe Esposito set his clipboard down, eyebrows raised. Charlie Hodge whispered, "Is she really?" But Elvis didn't move. He just smiled. Lisa stood beside him now, looking up. The stage lights painted gold halos across her hair. She lifted the rhinestone microphone with both hands like it was made of glass. "Can I sing too?" she asked. The band looked at each other. Al Pachucki, the sound engineer, reached for the volume knobs, hesitating. He wasn't sure if this was part of the plan. Elvis leaned down, voice soft but firm. "You sure you want to, honey?" She nodded. He laughed quietly. "Then sing, baby. Sing your heart out." He motioned to the band. "Start it again." Charlie counted them in, and the first slow piano notes of "How Great Thou Art" filled the air again. Elvis began the opening line, but halfway through he stopped and pointed to Lisa. "Your turn." Her voice trembled at first, barely more than a whisper, but then it grew pure, thin, fragile, and real. The entire arena seemed to lean in to hear her. Elvis watched her with pride and something deeper, something closer to ache. This wasn't just a father teaching a child a song. This was a man seeing the best part of himself reflected in a smaller, braver voice. Charlie later said it was like watching the moon try to outshine the sun, and somehow it did. Lisa stumbled over a lyric. The words slipped away. She bit her lip, embarrassed. Elvis crouched down beside her, the mic still in his hand. "Don't worry about the words," he whispered. "Just feel it." She looked up. "Like you do." He smiled. "Exactly like that." They started again, this time together. Their voices intertwined. His deep and worn, hers light and new. The song filled every inch of the empty seats, bouncing back in layers of harmony no one had rehearsed. The sound techs didn't adjust a single knob. The moment didn't need fixing. For a few minutes, the two of them sang as if time had stopped. Then, just as they reached the chorus, Lisa's voice cracked. She covered her mouth, tears threatening to spill. Elvis reached over, touching her shoulder gently. "Hey, look at me," he said softly. She did. "You sound beautiful." Lisa blinked, her tiny hand still gripping the mic. "Even if I messed up?" He nodded. "Especially then." Behind them, the lights dimmed. Someone in the back whispered, "Should we keep rolling?" Al Pachucky pressed the record button without waiting for an answer. Because deep down, every man in that room knew they were witnessing something that would never happen again. The king of rock and roll wasn't performing. He was passing something on. And as the final line faded into silence, Elvis looked at her and said quietly, "That's how you find grace, baby. When the song ain't perfect, but you sing it anyway." No one clapped. No one spoke. It was too holy for noise. But in the back of the arena, Joe Esposito glanced at the glowing red light on the tape machine. It was still recording. And that tape, those few trembling minutes, would soon become the last unreleased gospel of Elvis Presley. The room was still vibrating from the sound. The hum of the last chord seemed to hang in the air long after the music stopped. Elvis stayed kneeling beside Lisa, smiling softly. His face looked younger somehow, almost peaceful. "You know what, honey?" he said quietly. "That's what music's for, when words run out." Lisa nodded, still holding her little microphone like it was something precious. Behind the mixing glass, Al Pachucky motioned to Charlie Hodge, mouthing, "Keep it rolling." Charlie gave a thumbs up. Elvis looked up toward the empty seats of Market Square Arena. 20,000 chairs, all silent, waiting for the show that would come tomorrow. But right now they weren't empty, they were witnesses. "Let's take it again," he said. Slower this time. The band hesitated. Joe Esposito whispered, "Elvis, you sure?" "We already—" Elvis raised a hand. "Not for the record. For her." Lisa smiled, stepping closer as the soft piano began again. He started with the same verse, but something was different. The power wasn't in the volume. It was in the tremor, the quiet conviction behind every syllable. He wasn't singing to her. He was singing with her. His voice wrapped around hers like a blanket, carrying her when she fell behind, pulling her back into rhythm, letting her breathe inside the song. And in that moment, the room changed. The rehearsal stopped being about soundcheck or notes or technical perfection. It became something else. A gospel inside the gospel. Elvis's voice cracked midway through the second verse, and for the first time, he didn't hide it. He leaned into it, his tone trembling but warm. Lisa looked at him, wide-eyed. "Daddy, your voice is shaking." He chuckled softly. "Means it's working." She frowned. "But singers aren't supposed to shake." Elvis looked at her like she'd just asked the biggest question in the world. "They are," he said, "when they mean it." A few of the musicians lowered their heads, pretending to tune their instruments, just to hide their tears. Charlie later said it was the quietest he'd ever seen Elvis. "It wasn't him performing," he said. "It was him praying." They reached the bridge of the song. "Then sings my soul, my Savior, God, to thee." Elvis let the words hang, voice almost gone. Lisa's small voice joined again, trembling but brave. "How great thou art!" Her pitch wavered, but Elvis didn't fix it. He just smiled. He knew that rawness was where the truth lived. For a moment, it was as if the stage lights had dimmed on their own, leaving only the two of them in a quiet spotlight no one had turned on. Even the rain outside seemed to hush. El watched from behind the glass, barely breathing. He would later describe that moment as the closest thing to heaven I ever heard in a room full of speakers. When the last note fell away, Lisa turned toward her dad. "Can we sing that one in the real show?" Elvis smiled, but there was something behind it, a flicker of hesitation. He looked down at his hands, flexing them slowly, as if they were heavy. "We'll see, baby. We'll see." She tilted her head. "You promise?" He paused. A strange silence filled the space between them. Then, softly, he whispered, "I promise." Lisa smiled and ran off stage to show Charlie her mic. Elvis watched her go, his smile lingering, but his eyes didn't follow her all the way. They stayed fixed on the spot she'd just stood. Joe Esposito, watching from the side curtain, later said he'd never seen that look on Elvis's face before. It wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't pride. It was something else, like a man realizing he'd just sung his own goodbye. And when the lights dimmed again, Al quietly pressed stop on the tape. But Elvis's last promise was already recorded. The following afternoon, June 25, 1977, Market Square Arena wasn't empty anymore. Thousands of fans were pouring into the stands for Elvis's final concert rehearsal before the evening show. The sound of chatter echoed like waves against the steel rafters. Cameras flashed. Crew rushed. The king was back on stage. Only a handful of people knew what had happened during yesterday's rehearsal. Charlie Hodge looked toward Lisa Marie, sitting beside the piano again, swinging her legs in time with the music. Elvis had invited her back, just for one more song before the real show began. He smiled at her, but something in his body language was different. His energy was slower. His shoulders slumped more. Still, when the crowd saw him, they roared. Even at soundcheck, he could raise the roof. "All right," he said into the mic, voice steady but soft. "We're gonna do one last gospel before the lights come up tonight. One for my little girl." Lisa perked up, gripping her tiny rhinestone microphone. The band started slow. Soft piano, light drum brushes, a gospel groove as gentle as a prayer. He began singing "How Great Thou Art." Every note carried like a confession. Lisa joined halfway through, her small voice trembling, sweet, shy. The audience, not realizing this wasn't planned, went quiet. For a few seconds, it felt like a dream replaying itself. The same father and daughter duet, only this time the world was listening. Then it happened. Halfway through the chorus, Lisa looked up at her father. She smiled at first, but then her expression changed. Elvis's hand was shaking. The microphone trembled in his grip. His breathing grew uneven. Still, he pushed through, voice straining. "Then sings my soul," he managed. Lisa froze, her brow furrowed. "Daddy?" she whispered into her mic. He didn't answer. The band hesitated, confused. Charlie looked at Joe Esposito, who motioned for them to keep playing. But Lisa dropped her mic, ran across the stage, and grabbed her father's hand. "Daddy, you're tired. Stop." The entire arena seemed to stop breathing. Elvis looked down at her, chest rising and falling. For a second, he looked like he might faint. But then, something in his eyes softened. He set the mic down slowly. The band faded out one instrument at a time until the only sound left was the faint hum of the amplifiers. Elvis knelt down, still holding Lisa's hand. His voice cracked. "You okay, Peanut? She shook her head, eyes watering. No, you scared me. That was when the tears came. Not from her. From him. The man who'd faced crowds of 50,000. Who'd stood on the biggest stages in the world. Couldn't hold his composure in front of one small crying girl. He reached up and brushed her hair from her face. Hey, don't cry, baby. You already sang perfect. But you stopped singing, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Sometimes the song stops when it needs to. Lisa sniffled. Did I do something wrong? Elvis shook his head. No, honey. You did everything right. A hush fell over the arena. Fans in the front row, unaware of what they were witnessing, began to applaud softly. Some thought it was part of the act. Others just cried along with her. Joe Esposito turned to Charlie. Cut it, he said quietly. The lights dimmed. The room fell completely silent. And for the first time in over 20 years, Elvis Presley ended a song before it was finished. Because the moment his daughter cried, the music didn't matter anymore. It wasn't a concert anymore. It was a goodbye whispered through a gospel. And when he looked at her, everyone there could see it in his eyes. He knew this would be the last song he'd ever share with her. For a long moment, the entire arena stayed silent. No instruments. No applause. Just the sound of air moving through 20,000 stunned people. Elvis stayed kneeling beside Lisa, one arm around her shoulders. The lights above them cast long shadows across the stage floor. Two figures, small beneath the vastness of the space. He whispered, You're all right, baby. You did good. Lisa sniffled and nodded, but she didn't let go of his hand. Her tiny fingers clung to his like she was afraid he'd disappear if she blinked. Joe Esposito stood frozen at the sound booth, headset in hand. He whispered, Do we start again? Charlie Hodge shook his head. No. Let it be. Elvis stood slowly, his knees stiff from years of hard touring, and turned to the audience. His face glistened under the light, not with sweat this time, but with quiet tears. He stepped up to the mic again, his voice low. I think we're gonna stop right here, folks. There were no boos, no complaints, just murmurs of understanding, like everyone somehow knew they were watching something too personal to break. He looked back at Lisa, who was still trying to be brave, blinking fast to hold back her tears. He smiled at her. You know what, honey? You already sang the best part. She smiled a little through trembling lips. I did. He nodded. Yeah, the part that comes from the heart. The crowd began to applaud. Not the usual roaring cheers of an Elvis concert, but something softer, almost reverent. It was the sound of people realizing they'd just witnessed something human. Charlie strummed a single chord on his guitar, unsure what else to do. The sound echoed for a few seconds, then faded into the rafters. Elvis turned toward the band. That's enough, boys. We've said what needed saying. As the applause faded, the mic picked up one last whisper. Thank you, Lord. Then he set the microphone down on the piano and led Lisa off the stage. The crowd stood and clapped quietly as they disappeared behind the curtain. Backstage, the tension broke into soft laughter and nervous silence. Joe handed Elvis a towel. You all right, E? Elvis nodded, smiling weakly. Yeah, just didn't expect that kind of duet today. He glanced down at Lisa, who looked up at him with tear-streaked cheeks. You okay, Peanut? She nodded. I didn't mean to make you stop. He bent down and kissed the top of her head. You didn't make me stop, baby. You made me remember why I started. That line hit Charlie hard. He turned away to hide his tears. Later that night, as the real concert began, Lisa watched from backstage, her little microphone still in her lap. Elvis sang like a man reborn. Strong, clear, and full of grace. But every time he reached a high note, he looked toward the curtain where she stood, as if singing for her alone. And when the final song came, he didn't choose Suspicious Minds or Can't Help Falling in Love. He chose How Great Thou Art. But this time he didn't sing the last verse. He smiled, raised his hand toward the curtain, and let the music fade on its own. He'd already found his ending. After that night, No one spoke much about what had happened on stage. The crew packed up, the lights dimmed, and Elvis retreated to his dressing room with Lisa and Charlie. He asked for no cameras, no reporters, just quiet. But Al Pachucki, the sound engineer, had left the reel-to-reel recorder running during the rehearsal, and that mistake, or maybe miracle, caught everything. A few weeks later, as the band prepared for the next tour stop that never came, Joe Esposito was cataloging tapes in the RCA locker room. He found one labeled in faded blue ink, Lisa's Gospel, Do Not Erase. He frowned, pressing play. A hiss of static filled the air, followed by the sound of Elvis's voice, gentle, warm, almost whispering. "You sure you want to, honey?" he said. Then Lisa's little laugh, clear as a bell. The tape rolled on. Piano notes, harmony, the soft exchange of voices, and finally, the moment everyone remembered, her tiny voice cracking, his whisper, "You already sang the best part." Joe stopped the tape halfway through. His eyes were wet. He called Charlie. "We've got something here, man. Something nobody else should hear yet." Charlie came down, listened, and said nothing for a long time. Then he wrote on the box in thicker marker, "Private, family only." After Elvis passed in August that year, the tape disappeared into storage. For decades, no one outside that small circle knew it existed. Until the 1990s, when a collector in Nashville claimed to have purchased a lost Presley reel from an estate auction. He described what he heard in an interview from Memphis Beat magazine in 1997. "It ain't the king of rock. It's just a man talking to his kid. And somehow, it's the most beautiful thing he ever sang." The audio was never verified, but experts noted something uncanny. During one section, right after Lisa says, "I did," a faint sound appears behind the hiss. Not piano, not breath, something softer, almost like a second voice humming the harmony that Elvis never sang. Sound technicians chalked it up to tape bleed or old equipment noise. But those who'd heard the story believed something else. They said that was the sound of a man's promise living beyond his own voice. In 2002, a small, grainy snippet surfaced online. Just 30 seconds of the rehearsal, leaked from an old RCA vault digitization. The clip ends with Elvis laughing faintly, then whispering, "That's Grace, baby. That's Grace." It went viral in fan circles. Bootleg collectors called it the gospel for Lisa. To this day, the Graceland archives won't confirm if the full tape still exists. Some say Lisa kept it locked in her private collection, refusing to share it. Others think it was buried with him, tucked inside the silk lining of his casket. Either way, the legend remains. The king's final gospel wasn't recorded for the world. It was recorded for one pair of ears, and maybe one heaven listening in. Years passed. Crowds kept coming to Graceland. The cameras, the flowers, the songs, they never stopped. But for Lisa, one memory stayed louder than all of it. Not the fame, not the headlines, just the sound of her father's voice whispering, "You already sang the best part." She was grown now, standing in the quiet hall of Graceland's museum. On the wall hung the small rhinestone microphone she had used that day. Beneath it, a single line engraved in brass, June 25, 1977, Market Square Arena. Visitors walked past, smiling, taking photos. None of them knew the full story. Only she did. In interviews, Lisa spoke about that rehearsal only once. Her voice trembled when she said, "When he stopped singing, it wasn't because he forgot the words. It was because he didn't need them anymore." She paused, then added quietly, "That was the last time he ever looked at me like that. Like the song was ours." Fans still visit the arena's site, now marked by a plaque. It reads, "Here, Elvis Presley performed his final song, dedicated to his daughter, Lisa Marie." But what it doesn't say is that the real concert happened the day before, with no audience, no spotlight, just love, echoing off empty seats. Charlie Hodge used to say, "That's the song that never ended." And maybe he was right, because even now, if you listen closely during the closing chorus of "How Great Thou Art" from that 1977 performance, you can faintly hear a child's laugh woven under the orchestra. Audio engineers can't explain it. Fans swear it's Lisa. Maybe it's an illusion. Or maybe it's a promise, replaying itself through time. At Graceland, late at night, the security staff say they sometimes hear music drifting from the closed-off studio room. A single piano note, faint, followed by a soft hum, then silence. One guard once whispered, "It sounds like two voices. One grown, one small." No one ever investigates. They just listen, because maybe that's the real legacy he left behind. Not gold records, not fame, not even gospel, but the sound of grace, passed from father to daughter. And if you close your eyes long enough, you can still hear it. The hush before the applause, the final breath before goodbye. The whisper that outlived the song. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes music can heal what time can't erase. Because love doesn't end, it echoes. What would you have done if you were there that day, watching a father stop the world for his daughter? Keep listening. The whisper never fades.